I've been in this field a long time. I ran the Solar Trade Group for 15 years. The last 25, I have a global owners rep business. And what do? I blend on-site distributed energy systems for infrastructure, corporate and institutional campuses, U.S. military, airports, hospitals, and the entire portfolio of high-value energy efficiency, because it is always less efficient, always less expensive to save energy than generated from any source, all the renewables, and all the different kinds of energy storage. Although I'm going to talk about primarily batteries this time, I've done flywheels and fuel cells and all sorts, and pumped hydro, all sorts of things. So, and again, I assume they're going to share this for you. There's no way I can go through this whole thing. I also am Sustainable Energy Director of GW's Environment and Energy Management Institute. I teach 3 interdisciplinary courses, different ones at GW, on sustainable energy, including the first course in the United States on renewable energy and critical infrastructure. And then last summer, right here at George Mason, I taught the same course on renewable energy and critical infrastructure focused on underserved and low-income communities, which I know is not allowed anymore, but I taught it. It was great, well received. So I want to talk about trends and threats a little bit. Obviously, in 2024, the planet has $58 billion weather disasters, the second highest on record. The U.S. also had the highest number of billion-dollar-plus weather disasters, 27 in history. And they're going to go up. It's not going to go down. I don't care what anybody really pontificates. That's the trend. The trend's continuing. The good news that I want to tell you is that at the end of 2024, the United States has enough domestic solar manufacturing in our borders to meet all our demand, which has been growing about 8% a year. So we have finally crossed the Rubicon, at least for solar photovoltaics, that we're manufacturing here. And in fact, we have about 110 new manufacturing plants that were committed to sort of by the third quarter of last year. Of course, the government's backing off of some of that, so I think it's going to be closer to 80. But 80 manufacturing plants, more than we had, and they're huge, is pretty astounding. So, you know, energy is a big issue regarding disasters, and when power lines go down, Texas, the natural gas pipeline pumps froze, and the water pumps at nuclear power plants froze. So we had a lot of issues dealing with infrastructure. And by the way, no one hires me because of my beard. Hurts my self-esteem. They hire me because they have a problem. And the problem is, and it's a lot more common these days, you need energy because of our internet, and now with AI and with cybersecurity. You need a functioning local grid of some sort, even if it's a building-based or critical infrastructure-based. And we lose people when this happens. You know, we look at statistics a lot, but people die when you don't have energy. And by the way, I like to use the example in Puerto Rico hurricanes. The 3 hurricanes hit, ending, I guess, with Maria. I spent a lot of time down there doing microgrids, but we lost about 586 people due directly to those 3 hurricanes. We lost over 3,000 people because guess what? After the year 2000, when people get a release from a hospital, they're not kept in the hospital anymore. They can get on their insurance or Medicare and Medicaid, their little medical machine, their dialysis machine, their heart machine, their ventilator machine. They're profoundly disabled, they're functioning machines, and they have batteries in them for 45 minutes, and they can go forward. Well, what the damn happens after 45 minutes? And once you have a week or two without power, and particularly when your hospital's down, you're dead. So our whole world has changed on how you sustain more urbanized societies. So we also have greater attacks on the grid, some planned and unplanned. So I picked a 2025 stories of planned attacks on Maryland's power grid that was written about in The Hill in February of this year. In March, a Canadian man was sentenced for shooting up a pipeline in the Dakotas. And so there are some interesting story about, I have not heard any about drunk women shooting pipelines. It's always drunk men. I do think this is a sexually driven issue, not to attack the president or anything. And so, but it seems to be men have things when they're upset and drunk against pipelines. And there are probably happened about 50 times in the last decade. So, and this is just an example in April of this year, large power outage in Crystal City and Pentagon City. So, I mean, it's here too, and this is a more well-to-do kind of community. And lastly, sea level rise is happening, glacial melting is happening. Whether you believe in climate change or not, actually it's not a real issue. The issue is, if you look at the data, most of our wired infrastructure, whether it's fiber optics, power lines, whatever, are along coastal cities. And a lot of them are underground. And in fact, in Georgia, they spent billions undergrounding wires because of hurricanes and tropical storms, only to find out when the wires are sitting in soupy water, even in their little vaults that leak, the giant rodents eat the insulation and they flare up and catch fire, and it burns the wires out underneath the ground. Not fun, not fun. So, and then 40% of the Earth's land is now dry lands, excluding Antarctica, research finds, and we have a whole part of our world that's having less water. And remember, most of our electricity is using water to create steam to generate electricity. And by the way, as a fact, we use more water in the United States for energy than we do for agriculture. And it's starting to hit up against each other, particularly west of the Mississippi. So trends. Wild winter weather. This is a great article on pressing the case for microgrids, which we're going to talk about, and microgrid markets growing exponentially. This is a great article on 2020 on EDF installing a crown jewel, one of the biggest microgrids at the San Diego port. And I do a lot of teaching at Seacoast, the Navy Officers Engineering School in San Diego. And the issue is we have a globalized world, whether we like it or not. When I was born in 1950, we had about 1,800 cargo ships. Today, we have over 400,000 cargo ships. So we are moving stuff all over the world that we all rely on. And energy at ports is probably one of our biggest fault issues going on. So this is a 2025 report from the Energy Information Administration. EIA sits within the Department of Energy, but is totally autonomous. And this is looking at solar and battery storage in the United States. By the way, the United States of America has more large-scale battery storage on the grid than any place in the world, period. Not even close. And it's going up in double digits every year. It's not going to back off. We are trying to develop what we call self-healing grids, like we have in the internet, like we have with telecom, so that when you lose a power line, doesn't mean you're going to lose all your critical feeder lines, what's going on. This is an attempt by the regulatory community, but more by the private sector utility industry to try to say we can no longer just sit there and get buffeted by these extremes. I'm doing some work with DOD and some local communities on electric school buses. Guess what? A school bus is a battery box on wheels. And so you may use it as a school bus and use that and store, let's say, the solar or wind electricity in it. Or you may then move it into some feeder line powered by some kind of certain renewables and use it for a critical grid point powering a group of first responders, police, fire, ambulances, part of hospitals, or whatever, convergent points for first responders. So my guide to local communities, and again, most of my business, something horrible has happened, and they call me in. And so the hurricane has come, the flood has come, the tornado has come, just the crazy grid outage has come, and they're in shock, and there's a hierarchy of functions that you basically deal with. And this is my hierarchy built on others, but obviously communications is probably the most important thing you can keep going. So cell towers, repeaters, government communications, of course, police, fire, ambulance. So that's generally when Katrina came, which is when I really got into this up to my neck. That's the first thing I was doing, was bringing in systems that were sized appropriately for different size cell towers, dropping and plopping and connecting them just to keep cell service going, and in some cases, repeaters going. Area cameras, and that's a lot for first responders to see what's going on. Then the first responders themselves, I already talked about, police, fire, and ambulance. Pumps, I'm doing a lot of work under the European Union now, dropping hybrid renewable systems from all over the world in Ukraine. And one of the first focus areas after cell towers are pipelines, water, sewage, fuels. And it's very, very important to do that. And I'm very glad that Optimized Water, if you haven't gotten it, go down to the second floor of the driveway and at the back of the building and look at a solar-driven water purifier and pump system. These systems are essential. You need water. In fact, with Katrina, after I was doing cell towers, the big thing I was doing was water pumps, because when you're putting up the grid, if you don't have pipeline water pressure, you can't bring up the power plants. How are you going to get power plants up without electricity? And by the way, I know if you ever see me killed, it will probably be because I say things like this, but diesel engines made a lot of sense when there were no alternatives. But most of the problems I get called into is either catastrophic failure of diesel engines, or when they break down, you can't call, like the Maytag repairmen, 1-800-DIESEL. They don't show up during these events for some reason, and you can't fix them. Or when your tank leaks, or when your diesel engine drops 130,000 gallons of diesel fuel. You don't want to deal with issues like that during catastrophic events. So while diesel engines have made a lot of sense, and I still keep the legacy diesels with my projects for sure, but they're used as an anomaly, not as the basic core. And so that's another issue. So water sewage treatment plants, not just pipelines, are also important. In an industrialized society, if you've ever seen big events, you have water quality problems like crazy. And of course, if you have backup sewage plants, that sewage goes somewhere on farmland and stuff where you don't want it. Transportation, lighting, signage, major intersections was the first thing I was brought in after Katrina and Ida, after hurricanes, because you got gridlock at major intersections, so you drop units there to keep them going. And by the way, when I got called on Ida by the Emergency Preparedness Group in Louisiana, they said, do you know if there are any of those units you dropped in Louisiana during Katrina 16 years before operating? And I go, yeah, I know if they're operating. Could you tell us? I go on my little computer. I said, well, we deployed 237 systems, and 218 are working beautifully. And I don't have the internet connection for the others, I don't know, but 218 are working just fine. They go, do you know where they are? I go, I can give you latitude, longitude of all of them. Can you get us others? Sure, happy to do so. So the fact is these last a very, very long time. And what's nice is that those units totally power intersection signal lights or water pumps or whatever you're doing, or your police, fire, ambulance. River ports and airport lighting, communication, security are very important. I actually do a lot of systems now for airports, where you're seeing we're having a lot of airport issues lately. But on runway, to have at least half the runway independently powered with very clean, reliable power for both communications, security, and lighting can keep airports running when they have other issues or anomaly. I'm going to be speaking at George Mason next week on a big data center conference we're having here. I have been head of 5 100% renewably powered data center projects. Data centers are going to be using more and more of our energy. They need energy efficiency and energy standards. They need renewable energy, energy storage, and then you use the grid as your ancillary power, not the other way around. In buildings, when I'm called in to do buildings, I look again at critical functions, just like a town. Wi-Fi and phones, operating rooms in hospitals, data centers within buildings, sump pumps in the basement. If you have a flooded basement, you got to get the water out of there. And if the grid's down, and by the way, some pumps have batteries. Guess how long they last? Barely an hour. So most issues are longer than an hour, if any of you lived through that. At least one elevator shaft. And I can do HVAC systems if they're efficient. So if they're ductless heat pump systems, easy. I have a geothermal heat pump system in my home, ductless also, easy. Some of the others with giant duct pumps, a little hard, but you can keep part of the HVAC systems going at all times. So at least you have some heat or some cooling in those most extreme days. In communities, you also want to have critical access. Believe it or not, and I've done some work with the Public Utility Commissions of New Jersey, Illinois, Michigan. So if you have regional power outages, one of the things you might want to consider powering are ATM machines so people can get money. Pretty important. Refrigeration for food in supermarkets and pharmacies. So people have babies, they need milk for the babies and stuff like that. Of course, medicines at the pharmacy. All of that's pretty important. So healthcare, also do it not just at hospitals, and they generally have batteries of diesel and gas turbines. Again, I have lots of projects where they have fallen. During Superstorm Sandy, I misspoke. 5 hospitals went down in the region and had to move people out of the operating rooms during their operations. Do you know how upsetting that is? And they had tons of backup diesel and natural gas turbines. So don't assume the more you have makes you impenetrable. It does not. Gasoline pump islands if you have extended outages. How is police, fire going to get gasoline? But critical people working at hospitals and stuff like that. You still need movement of vehicles, so have certain gas stations designated and have their island pumps 100% operated. And then schools, I've done a lot of schools, not just, first of all, energy is the 3rd highest cost of education after teacher salaries and benefits, but schools are conversion points for first responders. If you have an emergency, they generally have a lot of land, so you can bring hoses and pumps and everything you need, and of course you can have people working out of the schools, or people have lost their homes. Instead of doing what happened in New Orleans, where they go to the stadium, that's ridiculous. Go to your community, to your local school. And you'll have a kitchen operating with refrigeration, you'll have communications, you'll have a computer lab, you have a PA system, and you'll have some lighting and security. So there's all sorts of stuff here. So now to keep in time, because I'm under a lot of pressure to get all of this information out, and again, you'll do this. So this is a December 2020 article about coastal Louisiana residents, Hurricane Laura, 600,000 people without power, and what we brought in there. Another article on AI-based, artificial intelligence-based microgrid at a saltwater pumping facility in Texas was the first one. Again, you need water. Global telecom network expected to install nearly 113 gigawatts of new distributed generation energy storage between 2018 and 2027. I'm happy to tell you they are about near 159 gigawatts already installed. and we're not even at 2027 yet. You might know. This is a 2020 article, 4 years old, constructed to build a 35 megawatt microgrid in California, wholesale near in Salinas, and that's already built, of course. Hospital in Corpus Christi, microgrid. We're doing a lot of direct current microgrids. You know, we all operate on alternating current AC, but you know, I want you to think about it. We're in a digital world now. How did that happen? And if you really look at it, I did the first DC-powered bank in the United States. And I'm going, it was in Florida, and I'm going with the head of the bank and out of New York, no less, and the owner of the building. And we walk into this big bank, and I'm looking around and go, well, everything's working on DC. And they go, what are you talking about? This is all I say. No, it's not. Your ATM machine's DC, all your screens, you know, what the tellers use are DC. Your copying machine has a big, you know, brick on the bottom there with the plug. That's DC. Let's see if your duct pumps are DC. And I take a knife and I cut into the wall. And then we open up the duct and we look at the duct pump label. It's a DC. So everything, actually, these days are pretty much DC, which means great. You don't have to use inverters if you don't want it. You can just do charge controllers. So there's a whole bunch of new approaches we're looking at, particularly in buildings and other kinds. So this is the optimized system that's now outside, and they have different products, but the point is, and they're here, I think I see them, is Mike. Mike, raise your hand. There it is. You guys, there you go. And so here we, they have coffee rather than pure water in here. They won't let you have the coffee, which I'm extremely upset at, but I want you to take a look at the system. This is their mobile trailer unit. So, you know, this is it. This is what came from it. This was a company in New Jersey that ultimately is no longer around, but their team is, and they're tied to ByteWise now. But this is the ones we brought into Puerto Rico. This is Zero Base, and this is a company out of Michigan, and this does carbon fiber casing, size for a big pickup truck, and you drop them down. Some of them, of course, have wheels on them. Some of them have wind turbines on them. I want to tell you something about solar. I know none of you really know this, but have thought about it. Solar only works when it's sunny out. Damn. Wind mostly blows at night, and when it's stormy, it's windy. So blending them together works very, very well. And I have over 790 buildings around the world with solar and wind, so I can downsize the battery banks. And there are all sorts. These are deployable units, the type I'm using in Ukraine. These are small biogas generators. You can look a lot of wood waste during storms. You can put them in there. They actually are oxidized, and they produce 24-hour power. This is the World Water System off of Louisiana. This is on-site cellular towers with solar and wind. I've used them across the Central American. These are deployable photovoltaic panels that could, you know, during an emergency, you drop the boxes and you put them right on the ground, and you can power stuff during an emergency. This is out of Japan, a deployable unit, and same thing on shipping containers, so power in an hour. These are electric vehicles that are made into small microgrids. These are buses for emergencies especially. This is pretty recent. This is Gridscape working with the U.S. General Service Administration, and these are containerized microgrids and pretty high power outputs too, deployable. All sorts of things on trailers. These are solar refrigerators that actually are at seaports now, exported out of New Mexico. Sacred Solar, totally Native American owned, and this is to run refrigeration. About 40% of seafood goes bad right at the port. So now they don't do that. They become more economic. We can't afford to lose food. We just can't afford now with a world over 8 billion people. This one I love. This was a unit that actually was produced here in Arlington, no less. And this is in Maine, and it's overlooking the St. Lawrence Seaway, and we're running cell towers and also security equipment for Homeland Security. And I was in charge of overseeing, which are up on stilts. And there is another corporation, I'm not going to mention their name, but they are a defense contractor, and they were putting them on the ground with the solar. And I kept walking over saying, I think you should put them on stilts. And they looked at me and said, ours are waterproof. And I go, mine are waterproof too. So I came back in 4 months after the big snow, and mine were working just great. And notice that the panels are really steep because you want the snow to slide off. But does anyone know why the high ones worked and the other ones didn't? Anybody have an idea? This is only we'll learn by this professor. Moose love to have sex with these boxes. Theirs were all destroyed, and mine were working just fine. They were moose-proofed, just so you know. There are things you got to know about that, and I'm glad you learned that here. If you go on Amazon to solar battery systems, you will find about 40 different companies, and I'd say half of them are actually excellent systems. I use them individually. I don't do residential systems at all. But once in a while, I'll get called by a community that's had a storm, and we just buy a bunch of them, and we bring them into somebody's apartment, usually elderly or handicapped, and they need some light, they need their cell phone charged, they need a radio or TV. Some of them are big enough to actually run a refrigerator. So there's immense, and they're between $300 and $2,000. So they're getting better and better. This is a small water quality unit. Battery banks and building infrastructure. I'm just going to show, we're going to have a tour tomorrow. I'm 2 blocks away from here. I have 2 buildings that are 100% self-powered by different blends of commercially available renewables and battery banks with high-end efficiency. You'll get to see it all if you come. But I have one of the first standardized battery banks that ever came into the market. I mentored the company. I now have 27 to choose from. It makes me so happy. And we're going to run for them in like a minute. So these are the Tesla units, and he, to his credit, came out early. This is Sonnen, the biggest battery manufacturer in Germany. This is the Siemens battery bank. This is EP Cube, got a Canadian solar, gorgeous. This is ABB, the giant multi-billion-dollar company out of Europe, battery bank. This is eSpire Mini. This is Kilovolt for bigger buildings. This is my favorite, LG, South Korea. They make good cell phones. They also make good battery banks. This is the Lycon 5000. These are my 2 buildings there, one in the front and in the front center, my home, which has solar water heating, different kinds of solar photovoltaics, all tied to a huge battery bank, direct exchange geothermal heat pump, back office building right behind this, solar roofing shingles, wind turbine, hydrogen fuel cell, and a battery bank. By the way, all cost effective. I never have an outage. Sensors and controls. So this is 3 Virginia-based companies here have created a high-end sensors and controls, and Fend, I believe, out of Arlington here, was just bought for $1 billion, but I'll call them Fend for now, and they make one-way diodes, so Putin can't control the sensors on my battery bank. I was very concerned about that. Tumalo does the same sensors for batteries. I can see battery health. And then building energy management that comes out of the Virginia Tech Research Center right here in Arlington. This company does little sensors on your circuit breaker, so I can see every circuit in every building and see what's going on. And then I like to promote this particular company, though there are about 30 others just like them. These 3-tier out of Seattle has 40 PhD hydrologists, oceanographers, and meteorologists, and 4 supercomputers, and they can tell you anywhere on Earth how much sunlight you get, how much wind you get, and how much water you get. And they can forecast. And half of the U.S. utilities that have wind farms use them. And they can tell, well, we're here in April, they can say March 5th to a utility in Western Pennsylvania, you will not have any wind that day. So make sure your spinning reserves are up and ready to take over. Or vice versa. March 7th, you're going to have twice the wind you expected. So you can maybe retire something for a day and take a look at it because you're going to have way more than you can use. Having that capability, tying all this stuff to AI and blockchain are going to change how we operate, not only with distributed renewables, but distributed natural gas in particularly, and some other technologies. So there's no such thing as a dumb question. Once I make a presentation, you may always email me. I don't believe there's anybody on the planet that has more studies, reports, articles, because I keep using them in my classes. I'm happy to share with them. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much. Was I close to on time?
You're good.
Such pressure.
Honestly.
Such pressure.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. Claire or Shane, which one's going to go first? Okay. So did you, yeah, come on up. No presentation, but
You can wave your hands.
I don't have the, but I'll use the microphone here.
very good.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, so I'm Claire Saxon. I work with my partner Shane, who will talk about technology later. But I'm going to talk to you about information visualization in 3D and technology and art and getting along. So the topic of this panel is opportunity business for the local DC businesses. And I come from Europe, so I don't know the local businesses here, but I understand how local solution can help global problems. And I believe, and I've seen how different groups working together tend to have a better outcome than when we stay in a close, undiverse group. So one thing that really inspired me a couple of weeks ago is when I heard one of the French University of Marseille, which is along the Mediterranean, open up some sort of a fund, a new branch in the university to host American climate scientists who lost their jobs recently, and they are, calling the scientists. They're reversing the brain drain back to Europe. But I think they, probably go back. And so the first thing I thought when I saw, I got invited to file in. Yes, file in. Excuse me, my French is taking my brain over here. I think that the European policies in general are very favorable to international partnership. And so for local Washington, D.C. businesses, the opportunities I could talk about from our perspective today would be to maybe seek partnership over Europe, because we are very eager to do international collaboration. And we're open to partnership. So that would be this. And tomorrow we'll do a presentation of GaiaViz, so I'm not going to go too much over this today. But I would like to say that in our domain, when we map and display information in 3D in interactive systems, that we do our best efforts to make systems that are efficient on energy, efficient on gear. We do not use hyper-specialized gear. We use gear that are off the shelves. So we create systems that are that can work off a fairly regular laptop. You don't need a supercomputer, but you can also put it on a supercomputer. So people have done it. So students of GMU also have done quite amazing data visualization with it. But one thing that is very nice with the interactive visuals and live visuals is how it fires a bit the imagination and inspires people. And in collaboration settings, this is very interesting when we're able to join together to to discuss issues, and we all bring our own perspective, and visualizing our data together helps us to reach a deeper understanding of a topic. So this is a powerful point to be at in a group to find new solutions together. And so I was very inspired this morning with the opening speech that was, talking about and covering all the state and the various form of displacements that are taking place in the world right now. And I've seen, people use art because the systems we deploy use a lot of visuals and therefore are pretty artistic. So we do quite a bit of digital art actually with it. And it made me think about a couple of classes and efforts, a lot of programs, and now more not specifically in local communities, but more in refugee camps and population that are displaced with more in conflict-related area and war area. And a lot of relief comes not just from the food and health, but also from the regular activities and art and education that usually needs to be done with minimal setup gear and really just like, I would call that low tech. I would love to see art and a lot of art done, digital art, well, specifically digital art, but art in general and art therapy are things that can really help, sorry, take my notes here. Help, to relieve trauma for displaced population. So I'm a bit scattered here. Basically, I wanted to talk about those three axes of this technology is trauma relief and art therapy, education, and coordination. That would be more of a Shane topic for this. I think I'll be done blabbing here. I lost my thread. Excuse me. That would be it for me right now. Okay.
Shane, do you want to follow up, and then we'll go to Mohamed?
Thank you. I'm going to take this. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So do we have internet on this thing? Yeah. Do we have internet on the laptop here? Yeah, I just going to put up one page, About Us page on. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Oh, that's the secondary page. Yeah. Okay.
How do we bring up the web page?
No, it's here, but it's not there. Yeah.
He's going to come up.
All right, cool. Thank you. Okay. I'll put up the page, and then I'll let him figure out how to get it there. So, now we do the other one. Yeah, let's go. Yeah, if you can put that full screen right there. Okay, so I actually have some questions. One is, how many people here can raise their hand? This way I know how many people don't raise their hand when I ask questions. So second question is, how many people here are actually affiliated with GMU as in they work or staff or student of GMU? Okay, they're all right here. That makes it easy to remember. So how many people here are some sort of corporation for profit? Okay, and the others that don't have to work. Okay, got it. So let's see. I'm here because Lynn asked me to be here. Okay, that's it. All right. Okay, and some of you may not know this, but Lynn and I are actually because Lois put us together. Okay, a woman by the name of Lois Clark McCoy. Yes. So she is one of the most powerful women I ever met, other than maybe my mother, but I don't know. It's like a bear versus a lion or something. It's hard to, my mom's the bear. So let me tell you why I'm here, okay? I'm here to do business. I grew up with Santa Cruz, beautiful place. It's absolutely gorgeous, okay? My parents were technologists. My mother's a midwife. I had 7 midwives at my birth on the west side of Santa Cruz, okay? Yeah. Yeah, they did. Apparently, that was enough. It took 7. Yeah, apparently I was a little big. So, sorry, Mom. Yeah. So basically, I grew up with hippies. Okay, the beach, the ocean, the waves, the mountains, and technology. Okay, the technology side took over. All right, I'm kind of an engineer, a little bit scientist, mostly engineer. More nerd than business person, but now it's time for me to wear the other hat. Wear the other hat. Okay, so how do we do business? I mean, GMU, right? Looking for eyes. Hello, Bernie. All right, I don't know. That's your guys' job to figure out. I can give you a description of what we do. I can give you the really cool tech, and like this is why it's so cool. Claire can explain why it's useful. And it's your guys' job to like fill out the the NSF paperwork or something like that. We do open source and we do commercial closed source. Okay, I love open source because I can actually show and talk about it. In the world of data, we do data fusion, data visualization. Okay, and in the world of data, you don't get to talk about it. The most fun, cool shit, I never get to share. Okay, that's very frustrating, but when we work with university and GMU and things like government grants, which we've done a bit of, then we can share, okay? And this is one benefit we get from working with schools and with government institutions, okay? Another benefit is we're actually working with a Dane capstone program, okay? This has been a little difficult at first, as Bernie knows, but it's getting better. This semester, actually, we were really happy to see our students were about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of where they were last semester, which was about a week or 2 ahead of where they were before that, et cetera, okay? And what we're learning is how to train people, because our growth problem is training, all right? In other words, our stuff is technically, conceptually so difficult that the most difficult thing is designing data in high dimensions, all right? We've trained several people over the years. It takes a while, all right? That is our limiting growth factor. So we're like, well, how do we accelerate that? Hence, university, okay? We see a need for the ability to understand high-dimensional data, all right? When I meet with someone, like maybe that guy back there that probably doesn't want me to mention him, so I would say that I ask questions like, how big is your data? How wide is it? How deep is it? How balanced is it? And I'll give you some examples of that. You might have data that's really wide, not very deep, and terribly balanced. This is really boring. You're going to get a big field of data that looks like these chairs, basically, okay? Another example might be, no, it's more like a tree. It's got different depth to it. And like, I'm thinking, is it like an oak tree or is it like a redwood? Okay. And what do I mean specifically? Each branch is another dimensional depth. You can think about that being another table on the, referenced. You get more complex data when you start talking about things like graph databases, social networks, stuff like that. Those are the hardest, okay? What I really love, though, is real-time data. And that's why I don't have anything on the screens other than a website. If you want to see real-time data, come over to the booth, okay? Because we're not actually just about real-time data, we're about interaction with the data, all right? So in order to understand data, you have to see it and you have to interact with it. And that's why we use 3D, okay? You get to literally fly through your data, and people have particular interests. For example, most people think in this culture, green is good, red is bad. However, Chinese, red is good, okay? The way you perceive and feel data varies by the individual. I go in front of people that want to see 20 objects, and that's it. Any more? Too much, okay? I have other people, I remember a guy from IBM, I told him I could show him 1 million attributes at once. He didn't believe me. I could, okay, here's 250,000 objects in 3D, and I'll change one attribute, one object. And he's like, holy shit, I can actually see it in this field. Okay. We're very, very good at that. Here's an example from anthropology, or I don't know, not anthropology, it's more cultural, but you can go into, if you're trained, if you're used to the rainforest, for example, or the forest or whatever, you can actually sense the time of year, the weather, and be like, you know, I think this hill over here is a good place to look for food. And you'll go and you'll look at, you got literally thousands of trees, bazillion branches, and you'll be able to spot the fruit. That's why we use 3D. That's why we let you interact with it. Now, questions? I just saw someone flinch, so.
I have some questions. Are you ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the problems I have, and I want you to explain it to me, is that I find sometimes there's too much data, right? So in this three-dimensional approach, in terms of decision-making, how does that, what's the logic flow to that so that someone finds looking at lots of stuff doesn't overwhelm them?
Okay, that's the individual. So
Company as an individual.
that's also a bigger problem. Okay, so good question. First of all, I kind of break it down into two major categories. One is exploring data. This is the person, the data analyst, et cetera, that spends, not necessarily a data analyst. In fact, a lot of times it's not an analyst at all. It's a biologist or something, but they've got a problem they're trying to solve. They're the one that spends a lot of time with the data, okay? That's the explorer, okay? That's actually more what we built our tool for. The other one is the presenter. Now they go in front of, I don't know, the Foreign Affairs Committee or something like that, and they give them a 20-page piece of paper with one pie chart on the front and says we should spend this much on this and then maybe 20 categories. Okay, the presentation side of things. That's the harder part because basically you have to not just understand what the solution is, you have to convince someone else or a whole group of people. That's more difficult. We do have services to help with that, okay? We call it presentation services. And believe it or not, it's more infographic but it's backed by real data, you know. The person that's actually missing here today is Iliad. We hope to see him soon. And he could say this much more eloquently. He understands the purpose of that. But basically, we set out a long time ago. Let me see if I can get this to scroll. There we go. So there's us. Wa la la. Okay, that pretty much says it. I don't know if I can get this thing to go full screen or not. I don't want to try. Okay, yeah, it's a mighty goal, and we're not the first. It's not even our idea. So it's actually, this is the first person we saw that really, Buckminster Fuller did this thing. It's little on the screen here, but basically what you have here is a really big computer and a huge dome with labs and conference rooms and people and da-da-da-da-da, right? So he had this idea that we could use computers to simulate everything, kind of like Google, but more advanced actually, and that we could use that to solve global problems, okay? And he had this idea when computers were basically in the, calculator stage of, so he was seeing really far forward. Go ahead.
That would be like a implemented global citizenship.
So, yeah, so Buckminster Fuller is the first person we were aware of that basically described this, and he worked really hard on it at the end of his career, mostly on paper. There's pictures of it, big, drawings. He called it, he had two names, Spaceship Earth. So Spaceship Earth and World Games. World Games, the idea was that you simulate the world and potential futures, and you play the game, and you try to make the goal is that everybody wins. So as a business mind, the first thing I think is that's impossible. And I agree, that's true. It's more like a compromise that the majority can agree upon and take action on. That would be my interpretation. Now, everybody does win in that our children one thing in data that you see is that it's really bad. I try to remove myself emotionally from the data. I build the tools. It's your guys' job to use them. One more thing. I always have one more thing. It's like one more thing, one more thing. Okay. So I didn't actually ever meet Buckminster Fuller. I met a guy met a guy named Tom Van Sant. And do we have him on there? I thought we had him on this page. Maybe not. Okay. Okay. Maybe it's in the text or something. I was hoping for a picture. Okay. All right. I'm very visual. But anyway, somewhere in there it says Tom Van Sant. I don't know if it's this page. Yeah. Okay. We'll go up for a second. I'm getting ahead of myself, obviously. Data one. Oh yeah, we talked about this. This is interesting. You talk about. They're not here right now. Anyways, you talk about data sources that we're interested in disappearing. I got USAID here, UN SDGs, EU Open Data. Data one, that's environmental data. Does anybody know Data one? No. Okay, this is a really interesting project. There's a group that's mostly behind it, but there's a whole collection of people in Santa Barbara, UCSB, all right? It's over 1 million environmental data sets with metadata indexed. It's available on AWS, I think Microsoft for free. I think somebody was saying, how do little guys get a hold of it? Well, you can't just get the data raw form. You have to have a big team to do that. You need it with metadata, and you need it organized and cleaned. So data one, if you want environmental data, okay? You can search by things like, I want to know about, I don't know, fish in the Northwest between 1970 and 85 or something. You know, it gives you that kind of meta tagging. It's a text-based search. I would like to visualize the whole data set. That'd be a great project to fund, you know. Speaking to you, GMU. I doubt I'm gonna get a commercial partner in that. All right, I get one. All right. I can give you the abstract, right? All right, so what else? Tom Van Sant, I'll leave with that. You know Tom Van Sant? Okay, he's one of Al Gore's favorite people. All right, Tom Van Sant is an artist. He did things like, he put a human eye of Horus, actually it was a human eye, Egyptian eye. He put it at the nano level using atoms. He also made a big one in the mirror in Arizona that flashed at the space station as it went by. Lined all the mirrors, so a certain orbit at a certain time. He did things like that. He loves kites, did amazing, amazing kites. And he also did something called the Geosphere Project, which I believe was a result of Buckminster Fuller's work. But he actually built a prototype. They had a small one deployed at the UN, okay? You saw that, cool. I never got to see it, but I was there when it got funded. It was Robert Mueller of the United Nations, not the other ones. There's a couple of them that are famous. Robert Mueller was Assistant Attorney General of the United Nations for, I think, I don't know, 20 years, I forget. He's the guy that stood behind the guy that gets elected every 2 years and runs everything, okay? So basically, I'm giving you a feel for the people that have inspired me. So the people I talk about, not Bucky, but Tom, Lois, you know, Robert Mueller. That's why we do this.
And our final speaker, and then we'll go into Q&A with time available. Did you want to sit there, or what's easiest for you? Yeah, I can sit. Grab a microphone, and thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mohamed Hafez. You can call me Mo. I am the founder and CEO of a company called ByteWise. I'm also an adjunct faculty professor at Johns Hopkins, where I teach a course on artificial intelligence, renewable energy, and climate change. for fun, I also host and produce a podcast called Beyond the Byte, talking about the technological effect on society, talking about some of these new tools and how they are affecting us and where the trend is headed, the future trend is headed with tech. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Actually, I've got season 2 is coming out now. I'm working on it. A whole bunch of really, really awesome content, improved from the first season. And second season is going to be a lot of interviewing a lot of CEOs from across the globe, working on AI projects. Some have big companies. I just interviewed a phenomenal woman who's a CEO of a Q-Secure, quantum security, quantum data security, preparing for the quantum revolution. Very, very interesting stuff. I'm here because I'm very much interested in the intersection of not just AI in general, but in terms of technology and how it can benefit and or potentially harm society. I actually noticed your tech for good, very much hashtag tech for good. I'm all about that. So Thomas Edison famously said, I shall make the electric light so cheap that only the rich will afford to burn candles. And I really, the reason I want this quote to sink in is because I think that that's what's happening with AI today. For the longest time, we've had over the past several decades enjoyed a period where knowledge workers such as myself, and I'm a 15-year veteran of the tech world. I've been doing SaaS integrations and digital transformation for Fortune 500 companies for many, many years, large multi-million-dollar projects. Well, knowledge workers have enjoyed a lot of time to, earn big bucks and work and do all this stuff, and now they finally have a target on their back in the form of AI, because knowledge is now free, more or less, through AI. And this is why nowadays blue-collar jobs, if anything, are the ones that are not going to be affected by AI, but knowledge workers will be. But in an age where knowledge is free, wisdom is what's going to prevail. And this is why I founded ByteWise. We have a lot of knowledge, we have a lot of data, but we don't have a lot of wisdom in terms of how we use that data. And my belief was that we can empower the next generation of workers, especially in a time where there is a lot of job displacement and people displacement and global job changes, to arm the next generation of workers with AI knowledge, but not just how to use AI, but what it is, what its climate cost is, how it works, and how it's affecting society. And I believe that this movement is what's needed more than ever today, and not just in the US, but like I said, globally. India made its economy off of call centers. I mean, their GDP grew because they became the world's, call center. We used it, and I think that this kind of trend can also happen with AI. I believe that this is the time when we can reskill people all over the globe, especially the younger people that are digital natives from the very beginning. And I believe that there's a huge opportunity for this. Now, my company is all about upscaling. So we do a lot of our work as B2B, and we do a lot of AI strategy for people and consult. We consult for a lot of these companies. But my aim is really to bring all of this knowledge and education to the masses. We also use open source tools. I do believe in the power of open source. I think that open source is a huge untapped resource for many people. I think that if you have a computer and an internet connection anywhere in the globe, there's no reason why you cannot learn to use AI. And I'm not just saying learn to use AI so you can go get a job somewhere. I'm saying learn to use these tools so that you can build solutions that are local, but with global thinking. So acting locally and thinking globally. we built a whole framework called the Clear framework to guide AI development, and and Clear stands CLEAR, and the C stands for community and compassion. And I think that local communities all over the globe can begin to use this technology to solve local problems. But we just need to empower them with the knowledge, empower them with the tools, and that's what I aim to do, and that's what I invite everybody to look into this kind of adoption and be the champions in your own organizations, in your own communities for this movement. I have an office as well in Cairo. And the reason I have this office in Cairo is because, as you know, this technology is being adopted at scale across the globe. But there's a lot of opportunities for people that are having a hard time finding jobs, doctors that are driving taxis and things like that, to really now become AI powered in their industry and therefore be able to really make a difference and become viable members of this new movement and of society. So that's all I have as far as talking about this. Now, I would love to take any questions you all might have about this. This is a topic that it's near and dear to my heart. I'm obviously passionate about it. My company is a very mission and value-driven company. So, yeah, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all the speakers. So, round of applause. And so, our session ends at 4:25. We got 14 minutes. We'll do Q&A up until then. So, I'll go over here, please, and we'll work the microphone around the room.
Thank you. Shane, question for you. Can you give examples of where this is already being used or could potentially be used related to forced migration?
Hello? Okay. So a lot of first of all, like I said, I build it, it's other people that use it, okay? A lot of the work has been focused on things like Afghanistan, some attention on Syria, some historical stuff like Angola. So we were thinking about putting together some visualizations for this show, but instead of a show, it was actually going to be for someone else. And instead, we ended up coming here. So our attention went to just showing up. So what do I think about not just what we've done? It might be looking at water wells, supply chains, things like that, logistics. But we think about what's happening right now and what can we do to help with that. So there's a couple different axes. One is like the process, okay? So the process is something like this. People leave for a variety of reasons. It's helping them go and leave, and that transition, making that safer, okay? Big issue in Africa, crossing the Mediterranean, for example. There's things we can do there, and the data is complex. There are what we call weak signals. So you can collect and scrape a lot of data off the web, and then you can start to analyze the weak signals, but it's complex, and that's where AI comes in. We know some people that are really good at that, so it has to be funded, of course, and we're talking about massive effort to make a big impact, okay? Sorry, I know I'm not talking directly to your question, but a lot of it I can't really speak about. What can I talk about? Can you answer that better?
Well, I guess I could just complement his answer in general in the context of forced migration. You're going to have to visualize a lot of information regarding the. You will need to analyze a lot of things to have adequate policies and adequate support dispatch and help out the communities as best, as best as possible. Information visualization is usually a very helpful supporting tool for organizing, whether it be relief or general integration, because we talked about this morning. It's not just about first aid and immediate relief, but also long-term integration. And those are complex questions, and it requires many people to think about it together. And so putting those information together and visualizing those complex systems to see where the actions can be directed the most effectively. And also, there are a lot of things. It's not just the physical information; it's about the structure of the populations being displaced or what the needs are, but also, we can think about the population being displaced, and in terms of the I don't know how you say this in English, the host maybe population or the welcoming population. How can they best match? This is something I believe could be looked at. In general, I think that they are. We could. This morning a talk was really much regarding the match between the skill sets of a certain population and where they could be welcome and integrated regarding the job opportunity. But I think also, just in general, some cultures may go along together, and I would think what we call Mediterranean culture in Europe go very well together, and generally the integration goes better like that. But I don't think I'm being. There's additional details.
Picture than say, I've been working on the ground response. Is it something that I?
Well, you're asking, basically a really complex question, okay? And the short answer is we don't know. It's for you guys to figure out. We have good tools that can help you with that. That's basically it. We've seen people use these tools in the past effectively, okay, in these areas. All right. We have ideas on how to go forward with that at a larger scale, okay?
I think we can see maybe 2 or 3 points. You can use it for logistic organization, and in other area you can use it for policy making and crafting. Because you need to look at such systems. It's different Zoom levels, if you want.
Yeah, I would like. Who's the question? Yeah, so I would say broadly speaking, there's really broadly speaking, because I'd like to answer it one way and then I'll pass the mic, is that first of all, we can help mitigate and reduce conflict. In other words, peace, help make peace. It can be used as a general tool to help bring people up. People are going to keep leaving, whether it be from war, economic reasons, if we don't bring the world up. It's the only way to solve things. The real solution is to bring the rest of the world up. The rest, yeah. And they don't want to leave. Talk to anybody that came from another country that missed their family. They missed their friends.
Yeah, my question is also somewhat tied to what she asked. In your view, seeing this data in a multidimensional space, how easy is it for many? Do you have any data to? I don't know if you've collected data, especially on decision making, on how easy it is, or how successful it has been when someone sees this data in that multidimensional space versus if I see it like what we are used to, and the impact and the effectiveness of viewing it in that space, and as opposed to viewing it in just XY kind of, normal approach, if I might say. What's the effectiveness? What is, just for either of you?
I think this is a yes. When the data is complex enough, it's very difficult to visualize it just in 2D. So you really gain a lot of understanding having it 3D and be able to go around, because our brain is wired like that. Now, I believe there has been some research on the perception and the effectiveness of interactive 3D in the perception and cognitive and the cognitive impact. But we didn't have access to this data specifically because we build a tool and we work with people who use the tool. And I'm 85% sure that they finished the research. They did a research it was in a contract that we were not. It was a bit confidential.
I would say this is, once again, GMU. We'd love to see some actually real scientific research. Most of what we have is a few small data points. We'd like to refine the specifics. In other words, it'd be nice to actually compare traditional methods with high-dimensional 3D interactive methods and show what the difference is, what it's good at, and what it's not good at, okay? Pie charts work, don't get me wrong, but they don't tell you everything. So.
We need talking pie charts.
But I was wondering when you were talking, I wanted to know if your question was about decision makers or explorers, because those are two different types.
It was more on decision makers because you kind of want to see eventually how effective.
We don't know. We've been mostly dealing with explorers. The original specs of the project was a tool designed for super users. Okay. Now we're shifting towards decision makers. That's what Lynn wants. He wants the multimodal data fusion. We certainly have the core framework for that. We'd like to apply it to something.
Hey, thank you all for the many different tools you're offering to the situation. I feel like there's a lot of different angles. And Scott, I was especially interested with the many different ways you've made yourself and your home resilient and self-sustaining. And I'm curious, what is holding communities and urban systems back from implementing the same things? I mean, I can come up with reasons, I can imagine, but yeah.
My daughter says she can hear me in San Diego without a microphone. But okay. What does she know, right? Yeah. Okay, we're on. Thank you. That's a good question. I have found that one of the biggest problems understanding technology and data is that people actually need to be exposed to it on the ground. There are always things about whether it's looking at information differently or looking at technology differently. There's always some burning question. And the problem is we don't take time to try to deal with those on the retail level, the human being level. So I started about 15 years ago to do weekly tours of engineers, architects, and international visitors. And I decided to do it in my buildings. And actually, I was picked on by both faculty and business people doing that. Of course, I don't mind being picked on. And I found that how do we expect people to change if they've never, ever seen technologies being integrated or information being integrated in a way they can understand that relates to them and have a safe place to ask a question and not feeling stupid and having a safe place to say, something's still bothering me. What about this? And I love when I do this, but when I'm asked by an engineer or architect or an international visitor something about a technology, I start saying, this is what I hate about it. And they're looking like, I thought this guy was promoting it, right? And I lay out why I hate about it. And then I end up saying, but this is why it's better than what you're doing. And all of a sudden, they sort of get it. And it's that sort of retail, on-the-ground education that we as a society have to do as we get more and more complex. And while AI and blockchain and some other tools can some way help us make it complex, they also complexify things, if that's a word. So I really think we need a social dynamic to go along with these great changes in technology and information